This right here is the casual and the cinephile.
Mm-hmm.
I am Justin, your host, the casual, with your second host, William Jacob Friedwin Henry the second. Hinkle. Second has to come before Hinkle. You know what I'm saying? Today, he's the cinephile.
Mm-hmm.
Today we're gonna do something a little different. We're not gonna really discuss a movie per se. We're gonna be discussing movie reviewers and their reviews for a specific movie. The movie in question is Dune Part 1. We want to go down the line of different, not necessarily 100% down the line, but I'm going to skim through and look at roughly all the different types of reviews that were left from Rotten Tomatoes on Dune Part 1.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And the Cinephile has asked me to look up a review by, what was his name?
I believe Richard Roper.
Well, I found the review.
Oh, good. Because he used to collaborate with Roger Ebert before he got the tumor in his mouth.
I don't know who that is.
He's a former critic from back in the day, but he got cancer and he stopped critiquing movies on TV.
Poor guy.
Yeah, may he rest in peace.
Oh, he passed away. That's insane. So, yeah, R.I.P. So, all right, you want to know what your Robert Roper? Have you seen what he said about the film?
No, I was just curious because I do my own thing.
So
look at them.
The headline says, "Stunning visuals propel lagging storyline and ultimately impressive Dune."
Is it rotten or is there a tomato?
I didn't. Well, I found an article from, I guess, him versus the actual review. Yeah. This is his. He wrote this whole thing. So he says the jaw-dropping visuals and post-pounding sound editing in Denis Villeneuve's.
Denis.
It don't matter. Stunningly gorgeous Dune are so awesome. It makes up for the slow-moving and quite familiar storyline, which is basically the New Testament meets Mad Max meets Star Wars. And yes, I know Frank Herbert's source material novel was published a dozen years before George Lucas's cowboy space opera, and no doubt influenced Lucas. But we're talking about cinematic adaptations here, so that's my opener, and I'm sticking with it.
Is that what he said?
Yes. You thought I made all that up?
That's why I thought at first. I was like,
no, I know.
Is that a fair comparison to say Mad Max into the mix? Because I could see Star Wars.
I mean, Mad Max. I don't know.
Because Mad Max is a different narrative, but Star Wars, I could see why. I could see that comparison. Bless you.
I mean, Mad Max, and maybe in the sense of because Mad Max is in the desert.
Yeah.
So I mean, maybe that's the comparison he's trying to make, and the adventure of what that is with them trying to do that. But I can't really say for sure. So yeah, Mad Max movie in the annals of is in the desert also, and I want to say I don't know, fight for survival maybe. I'm saying the navigation. I don't know. It is a weird little there for me.
Yeah. But what about Star Wars? What do you think of that comparison to Star Wars? Because you told me a while back it's not a fair comparison, but deep down, I feel like it is a good comparison.
So they're both sci-fi films. Okay, cool. I understand that. And yes, Dune takes place on
the desert.
What's the planet called?
Arrakis.
Arrakis. It's a desert world. Star Wars, the first one, A New Hope, takes place first half of the film on
Tatooine,
which is a
desert planet.
Okay. And then you go to Star Wars Episode 1, and the part of the film takes place where?
In Tatooine,
which is a
desert planet.
And then you go to the new ones, and on number 7 starts off with Rey on Jakku, which is a
desert planet.
So it's like I understand the context of that. Like, okay, there's a lot of main character, desert planet, main character that gets orphaned, essentially, which Paul didn't necessarily get completely orphaned because his mother was still alive.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? But I guess the same thing with Anakin. Anakin didn't necessarily get orphaned either.
He was an adult
given away. But he got still given away, so it's like, I guess he wasn't an orphan, you could say. It's all semantics at that point. But my biggest thing of why I said it's a unfair comparison is more so because of the writers behind the films. you having a Denis versus a George Lucas.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? That's literally the difference between Zack Snyder, Christopher Nolan. We saw what Zack Snyder can do for a comic film, Superman. We saw what Christopher Nolan can do for a comic film, Batman.
Mm-hmm.
Two very stark contrast. Both comic book films.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, under those grounds, yes, we can compare Superman and The Dark Knight. But because of the writing difference, it's not a. I don't believe that's a fair conversation. And that's how I look at Star Wars and Dune. It's not a fair conversation from the writing standpoint because you have an expert writer and then a not expert writer. George Lucas did the best with what he had, but to act like the first three Star Wars movies, which became 4, 5, and 6, are great films, I think is a lie. They're okay films.
I agree.
Now, then you go to number 1, it's an okay film. Number 2, it's an okay film. Number 3, really good. But it's standing at that point on the back of 5 other films. You know what I'm saying? So it's easy to be great when you have 5 other films that built all this lore, and then this is the one where everything really pops off. Seeing Anakin go back, become the villain and all that. So like under that context, of course. You know what I'm saying? So that's where it's like I don't like that type of comparison because it's like you have this expert writer and a non-expert writer. He still delivered something incredible. It's $1 billion franchise. Mm-hmm. No one can refute that what he created is great. But this is the proof of the pudding where it's just like not everything that's commercially successful is phenomenal. But in that same breath, not everything that always wins awards is phenomenal either.
Yeah.
And this is where we get into the nuance of art and creativity and these conversations, you know what I'm saying? Because it's more than just, oh, well, they're both sci-fi films, let's compare them.
Is it okay if I mention about George Lucas's very first film? Because I feel like that's his most sharply written film, in my opinion. I should throw it out there.
What was it called?
THX 1138.
And that was a flop, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. It's an interesting story, but it's for another time. But yeah, I should throw it out there that they consider it as his best movie, not Star Wars.
But yeah, so it's just like I don't necessarily like the comparison. Mm-hmm. Now, can we see? Yes, like I said, all right, Luke Skywalker, Paul Atreides. You can see the comparisons with the journeys they go on, whatever the case is. But one is more of a hero, one's more of an anti-hero. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. I know, Frank Herbert wanted him to be more looked at as like a villain type character.
No, he wanted to be more of an anti-hero.
Oh yeah, so I was right about that.
A dark messianic figure.
But even then, it's just like I don't agree with that view personally. You know what I'm saying?
But what? Which one?
The anti-hero. Even though I said like that's the role that he was put in, but I don't look at that as an anti-hero.
You mentioned a while back he's a warrior.
Yeah, because I look at him as a soldier. I believe that the anti-hero title only, in my opinion, only works in a world where there is a stark, like this very direct understanding of like, all right, this is good, this is evil.
Like Spawn or no?
I was like anything comic book related, right? Like we know Joker is a bad guy.
Obviously.
We know Batman is not. We know Penguin's a bad guy. We know Robin is not. Mm-hmm. Right? We know Lex Luthor is bad. Superman isn't. Mm-hmm. So when you have that purely defined, bad guys over here, good guys here, you have this middle ground where, well, this is an anti-hero. Here's Punisher, an anti-hero. Mm-hmm. Here's Spider-Man and Daredevil. And then here's Kingpin. Villain, heroes, and then the anti-hero in between. When there are clearly defined roles for everybody, that's where it's just like, okay, yeah. My problem with the Dune conversation is that the only person there that genuinely feels like a objectively good person to where like you are a hero is Paul's father, Leto. He's the only one that I look at. Oh, he's a hero. He's a good guy. It's like going back and looking at Game of Thrones, and Ned Stark is objectively a really good human being. He would be a hero in the story. Same thing with Robb Stark. He is a hero in the story. Everyone else, though, all the other cast of characters, a lot of them are pieces of shit. but they're just being human beings in that world.
That's
None of them are purely just evil.
that's one of the things why I appreciate Dune so much is that right there that
No,
you
and that's a
just
good thing. That's
mentioned.
what I'm saying. That's a good thing, right? So it's like there's no one in that world that I'm like this person with in the Dune one world
Mm-hmm.
that I'm like this is a absolute supervillain. Right? This is a villain 100%.
Mm. You
It,
didn't see that or no?
no, in my opinion, no. It's not
Me
Batista's
neither.
character.
Me neither.
It's not Batista's uncle.
Mm-hmm.
When we get to number 2 and you meet Fade, it's like no, he's a villain.
Evil.
He's murdering motherfuckers left and right because he just wants to. He doesn't care. He looks at life very frivolously. You know what I'm saying?
But he gets things done.
Well,
The objective
villains
done.
get things done all the time. That's what I'm saying. He's still a villain. But that's the thing. It's like okay, so he's the only one that's clearly defined as a villainous character. Everyone else is very much in between, right? Like, their uncle,
Baron.
the Baron. Yeah, there you go. He's looking at things through this lens of how he can prop up his nephews and prop up the Harkonnens and his people.
Yeah, the Empire.
You're not, you know what I'm saying? Like at that point, you're just doing your duty for yourself, which is the same thing Leto was doing. But Leto led with a pride that was he's not going to do. He has a code of honor that he's not going to cross. You're a hero. Cool. You're a hero character. The Baron, to me, he's just a normal human. Because I know mad humans that operate. Operate under that type of energy sometimes. It's just like that's just being a normal person. So and that breeds nuance within the characters. So for me to sit here and be like, well, Paul Atreides, he's an anti-hero. He's just a soldier.
Yeah.
That's it. He's a soldier. He's doing a job. His job in his mind is saving his family. And preserving the legacy of his father, what his father built, and getting his lick back for them killing his father and everyone else that he cared about. He's a soldier. That's it. I'm not. I don't want to give him the anti-hero title because of that.
I agree with you.
It's different with like a Punisher because all right, Punisher murders every motherfucker he comes across. You know what I'm saying? Objectively, oh, you're bullying this guy over here. Punisher ends up killing the guy. All right, like it's not just him going after the people he wants to get payback on. Punisher kills anyone. You cross me, I'm gonna kill you. Hence why the heroes have to sometimes put the beats on Punisher. It's like, oh, we can't let you kill this guy. We need him alive. It's like, no, like screw that. I'm gonna kill him. But in that world, you have the anti-heroes, villains, and heroes. It's clearly defined roles there. You very rarely are gonna see a thing where Spider-Man's like, you know what? All right, let me just be nuanced and kill this guy because that's the better option. That's not a thing in Marvel comic books. In the movies, it's more on the nose of just like they kill people unintentionally, whatever.
Is it robust in a way? Like, which one's more robust, comics or the movies?
What do you mean by robust?
Like, is it more... Let me think of a better analogy. Like, shoot. It'll come to me later. I apologize.
I got the computer right here.
Shoot. I used that description before.
Yeah, so see, the problem, because able to withstand or overcome adverse conditions, strong, sturdy in construction, healthy, vigorous. That's why I'm confused. I'm like, that's what this means.
I know there's another phrase for it like that.
Were you looking for practical?
Well, let me find another analogy for it.
Well, no, yeah. So
You're gonna edit that?
I mean, I can.
Or edit that out.
But yeah, so I don't agree with Paul being an anti-hero personally. But I can see the trajectory of the Luke Skywalker character and the Paul Atreides character and where the similarities come in. It's not a surprise, yes. George Lucas took inspiration from. The problem, though, then becomes this conversation of too many people, I believe, get caught up in the whole, oh, you took inspiration, so you just stole content.
I heard that conversation.
And I think that's a corny conversation. Because Frank Herbert, who did he take inspiration from for this story?
T.E. Lawrence, The Life of Lawrence of Arabia.
And there you go.
Yeah.
And I imagine a little bit of what's his name? Lovecraft,
Oh, H.P.
the man who
Lovecraft.
literally created the sci-fi genre or sci-fi horror,
Mm.
right?
You see some Lovecraftian lore
When
into it.
homie his kid becomes a giant slug,
A sandworm.
it's just like, what in the eldritch horror is that? The depiction of him, it looks absurd.
Really?
Yes, like if
I
like
kind of love it in a way.
I'm not saying it's a bad depiction. I'm saying like absurd in the annals of. Do they pray to him?
The what?
Do they pray to him?
Yeah, he's like the god emperor.
Well, that's what I'm saying. All right, so he literally becomes like an eldritch god. Like if you, like in Lovecraftian story, like someone turning in would turn into something like that.
They worship him.
I mean, that's what I'm
Sorry.
saying. Like, that's Lovecraftian. That's a Lovecraftian theme right there.
Mm.
So you're not about to tell me, oh well, George Lucas stole from Frank Herbert. Frank Herbert at that point then stole from whoever created the Lords of Arabia myth,
Uh, it's
and then
his
whoever.
biography. He's a real person.
Do we actually know that?
Yeah, that's a fact. He made a book called Seven Pillars of Wisdom, I believe.
He was.
Yeah, T.E. Lawrence.
Yes, he
Yeah,
was.
yeah, yeah. Like for those who haven't seen Lawrence of Arabia, you can see a lot of resemblance of Dune and a lot
All
of
right, so it's like,
inspiration. It's
but you take inspiration from Lawrence of Arabia, and then you take inspiration from Lovecraft and whoever else.
mhm. Yeah, that those are the only one I knew because he took inspiration from his life, his biography. That's like the only one I knew. But Lovecraft, I didn't see any Lovecraftian stuff
All right, so
until
you
you
get
just
yeah,
revealed.
that's what I said. You get to that part, it's just like yeah, that's Lovecraftian right there, 100%.
Mm.
That's so it's like all right, are we gonna say that at that point Frank stole from them? At that point, Dune
No,
isn't. At that point, Dune ain't an original story. Congratulations, everyone.
well, it's inspiration, but
But that's what I'm saying. Like that's why
like it
I don't
doesn't
like.
make
I don't
sense.
like the corniness of people like, oh well, Dune's better because George Lucas just stole the concept from him. No, you can't steal from someone who took from somebody else. That's not how that works. Everyone, they all take inspiration from one another, and they all have all the creators typically have a healthy respect for one another because of that.
Mm. From what I heard, I don't think Frank. I think Frank Herbert claimed that, but I don't remember. I don't know. I might be wrong.
That he felt George Lucas stole from him.
Yeah, that's from what I heard or read, but I don't know if I'm misjudging it or
I
misread
mean,
it.
if you,
I don't want to mislead
I
anyone
don't know either.
because
I'm saying
I don't
corny
remember.
behavior is still corny behavior. You know what I'm saying? It
Yeah,
doesn't
but
matter.
are we getting sidetracked though?
Yes,
Okay, let's go.
but he continues. Your boy, what's his name?
Richard Roper.
Richard Roper continues by saying Herbert's 1965 landmark novel is so dense and layered and enormously complex that many have long believed it was folly to even attempt to put it to the big screen, and that was certainly born out of David Lynch's 1984 version, which even David Lynch didn't like.
That movie. Mm.
But he says Denis is a master at creating mind-boggling futuristic worlds and tops himself with the overwhelmingly striking imagery in Dune. Whether you're gazing in wonder at some of the most gigantic spacecrafts in film history, the fashionably functional battle costumery, the helicopter-like ornithopters with multiple blades that make them zip about like menacing insects, or the spectacular, vast, and foreboding sand and spice desert planet of Arrakis, aka Dune, is a feast for the senses.
Mm.
Which I agree with.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
But you consider the film to be boring.
Absolutely.
Aren't you gonna give it another chance? Because sometimes movies get better on rewatch. I don't know about you though.
I'm trying to skim through the rest of this to see if there's anything. He doesn't go into anything else really.
Hmm.
He just talks about the characters, explaining the characters and all that. I mean, but based off of his title, he himself is acknowledging that the story is a bit boring. It's weird that he wouldn't go into that.
Hmm?
I said it's weird that he wouldn't. go into that here. He gave it 3 out of 4 stars. Wait, I mean, like I said, lagging storyline and ultimately unimpressive Dune is what he said as the title.
Well, it's not a big surprise.
No, it was a boring film objectively. Like it lacked in umph. Like they were world building. It happens. There's only so much within that context that you could do. You know what I'm saying? Like it wasn't a fun film. I didn't enjoy it. It was just.
You didn't enjoy the dramatic aspect of it, like the dramatic structure.
No, I was too busy dying because of how boring it was. So this woman, she wrote a little bit. This is interesting. The way Rotten Tomato works.
You're gonna check out any negative criticisms?
Yeah, I'm gonna go through.
Is it cool if I drink?
Yeah, do. So there's one guy, Paul Emmanuel and Nicola.
That's
from the Movie Buff. That's the website where he put his whole review.
I think me and Nick talked about him before, or that website.
The quote here is, "The Dune series has long been considered a landmark of science fiction. Fortunately, Denis Villeneuve's astute direction and laying the right foundations only shows his respect for Frank Herbert's work." He gave it an A-. I don't know what that means.
Is it rotten or not?
No. You got a tomato by that. That's just fresh.
Okay.
There's a lot of emphasis on
oh shit.
So let's see what the criticisms. He says Dune boasts a cast of the caliber of which rivals that of another star-studded film. Don't look up. Nevertheless, I can say that Dune delivers better in overall quality, with almost all the cast getting their characters fleshed out in the film. Personally, Jason Momoa's turn as Duncan Idaho is the best character in the movie, and it frustrates me how Momoa's performance has been overlooked by award-giving bodies for a Best Supporting Actor nomination. While Zendaya's Chani doesn't have much screen time, I'd argue that filmmakers purposely did so, considering how much mystery Shani has been to Paul as the lady in his recurring dreams. He praises Timothée Chalamet on the issue of appropriation and lack of representation. One of the critical issues with adapting Herbert's novels involves dealing with the Middle Eastern and Islamic themes that heavily influence the author's source material, and that responsibility falls into the hands of Villeneuve, whose role was to toe the line between inspiration and appropriation. Indeed, it is a fine line. Some pundits noted the lack of casting of Middle Eastern or North African actors to play integral roles, and this is understandable, especially given the novel's overt Islamic and Arabic undertones. In the filmmaker's defense, though, I'd like to think that the film aims to portray an acculturated future through integration, wherein characters can exhibit both Middle Eastern and Western influences at the same time. Another issue is that even with the best intentions, Dune sometimes traverses through the same waters where white savior narrative flow. And yes, Villeneuve counterpoints that this film is a critique of said narrative and not a means to promote it. Still, Paul's arc in the movie resembles that of the historical T.E. Lawrence's life was portrayed in the acclaimed film Lawrence Arabia, a classic that nonetheless courted controversy, blah, blah, blah. Ultimately, these issues are valid talking points. How you feel about that? The lack of representation?
I kind of see that a lot from what people have said and what you have said. You know? But everybody's entitled to their own opinion.
My thing with sci-fi. My thing with fiction in general. especially when we get into like the fantasy fiction, and
Okay.
this is what delves into sci-fi fiction as well. Is like I believe that when the genre was created, the purpose of the genre was to be very inclusive, not exclusive.
Mm-hmm.
So they wanted anyone. That's why like role playing video games are so fun for a lot of people because you can create your own character,
Mm.
right? All right, so you want to be an elf, you can be an elf. You want to change the skin color of said elf, change the skin color. You want to be fat, skinny, tall, short, muscular. You want hair all over your body, scars. Do it. Do whatever you want. It's inclusive. It's however you feel like your character needs to look for the narrative of the storyline. You know what I'm saying? So fiction was always supposed to be this thing that is inclusive. It draws you in, and you could feel a part of it. So with that, seeing something like a Dune or even like a Lord of the Rings, when Rings of Power came out, there was this big issue where people were upset that one of the dwarves was black, a black woman, and then one of the elves was black.
Is that an issue?
My thing with it is this: one, it's fiction. Two, what I just said is all about inclusivity. The skin color of the characters does not impact the story. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't a high elf. I don't know if that's what they're called in Lord of the Rings.
I didn't see the show.
Because there's two different types of elves in Lord of the Rings. You have the wood elves and you have the. I think he was a wood elf. It wasn't the other elves that were pissy ones. But so I don't mind there being a black elf. I don't mind there being a black dwarf. It doesn't matter because why would the skin color doesn't affect the culture of the character or the relevance of the character within the theme of the world Tolkien created. And that's how I feel about the Dune situation.
What Dune situation?
Which is what he's talking about, the lack of representation.
Mm.
I think that they could have doubled down and had a lot more colored people within the cast and gotten away with it. And I mean, at the end of the day, like,
oh my god,
it wouldn't have hurt the story. You know what I'm saying? Because it's a side character conversation.
Yeah, they're not that important. In a way, they're not that important, the side characters, even though it does build up the story and the lore.
But that's where I would say that's why it's important. That's why it's important though to have that representation.
But I hate it when people bring that up, is complaining that, oh, this character's black, da 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 da. Like, it gets me angry.
It depends on the context, right? So in this context, the world that we're talking about is supposed to be influenced by. It takes inspiration from Arabic culture, right? So you casting a lot of these side actors that are Fremen to be Arabic actors, I don't see an issue with that.
Yeah, nice.
Because that fits within the culture of what these people were derived from. So do that. Why didn't you do that? I can't tell you. You know what I'm saying? Having Javier Bardem, granted, he phenomenal job. He killed it in number 2. But did it have to be him in the role? You know what I'm saying? But on the flip of that, you could say, well, look at part of, because I don't know if he's from Spain.
Javier Bardem is Spanish.
But is he Latino or is he from Spain?
I think he's from Spain, I believe.
Because at that point, the argument would be,
because he did a phenomenal job. Like, I didn't care if he was Arabic.
Yeah, he's from Spain. So this is where the ha-ha of history comes in, right? Because when you know history, you can argue these points. And this is an important point. There was a part of history, of world history, where Spain was conquered by the Moors, and the Moors brought in Arabic culture to Spain. That's why there's certain architecture within Spain that is Middle Eastern looking and African looking. So with that, you could then argue at that point, that's why Javier Bardem, who is from Spain, I just Googled it.
I was right.
Could be in the role. You know what I'm saying? Because at that point, that type of the cultural influences from there got brought over to Spain when the Moors had conquered.
Interesting.
But no, as far as the other side characters that were there, so a lot of them weren't Middle Eastern or Arabic. Yeah, that's just a slate on Denis. And like I said, I believe that the ethnicity of a character only matters in perpetuity to the storyline. The Little Mermaid being black does not influence or affect the storyline of the Little Mermaid.
Absolutely.
Mulan being black destroys the whole story because Mulan is a Chinese woman.
Mm-hmm.
So we can't have that. Mulan has to be a Chinese woman.
Yeah,
You know what
I
I'm saying?
see.
That's where it's like, that's where I care about the skin color of a character and the ethnicity and race. That's where that matters to me.
Mm.
If we make a movie about Tom Brady, I want a white man to be Tom Brady. You know what I'm saying?
I kind of see the point.
Because the skin color at that point matters. The person playing at that point matters. You know what I'm saying? If I'm making a movie about Hitler, you know what I'm saying?
You hire a German person.
He wasn't German, he was Austrian.
Oh,
But yeah, you get the point, right? Like, and if we're going, let's go back to fiction for a second. If I'm making a movie about Black Panther,
yeah.
ideally we want an African man playing Black Panther.
Mm.
Storm
Mm-hmm.
or Static Shock, comic book wise, black characters. Static Shock storyline. Static Shock. I remember from the TV show there was a specific episode where Static Shock's best friend's dad, he was racist,
Mm.
and he was being racist towards him. So this being that being a part of Static Shock's storyline, you can't make a Static Shock movie and be like, oh, well, we're gonna cast an Afro Latino. No, no, no. I want it. I want Static Shock to be portrayed by an African American,
Mm.
100% African American, not half Latino, not half white. I want it to be an African American because that's what the source material calls for based off of the experience the character itself in the fiction was going through. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
That's where within fiction the color of a character matters, and the race and the ethnicity of a character and gender, all that matters in
Mm.
fiction. It's when the character, what the struggle the character goes through is influenced by that. And that's where we get into the conversation when I told you before, like, is the character's identity that they're black? Or is it the identity that they are just who they are? There are certain characters we see in fiction where they'll write a gay character and the character's personality is that they're gay.
Mm.
And then there's characters that they write, like I think Black Panther's a great example. His character is more about him being Wakandan than him being black.
Mm.
If that makes sense to you.
It does.
Okay.
But this subject I find too sensitive.
You sensitive.
No. That's not what I meant.
I mean, people are sensitive.
Mm. Everybody gets offended nowadays, so
I'm not worried about nobody.
that's why I've been hesitant about that conversation or to comment.
So this other guy, Paul Kanieski, he had this shit rotten.
A lot of Pauls giving good
Yeah.
reviews.
Not this one. It's rotten. Bad review.
Read it.
All right, so I'm skipping ahead. He said Villeneuve has taken Frank Herbert's classic novel and crafted a film that strains under the weight of his obvious reverence for the material. There is a Shakespearean gravitas to Herbert's writing, but the ponderous sense of self-importance that permeates Dune is reminiscent of George Lucas's Star Wars prequels. The only attempts at anything resembling lightheartedness are two lame jokes that land with a thud near the very start of the film, both of which are shown in the trailer.
Mm.
Visually, Dune is unquestionably awe-inspiring, as evidenced by its sweep of technical awards at last year's Oscar. But the special effects dwarf human interaction, as evidenced by Dune's total shutout from every acting category. As with superhero movies, the talented cast is in service of spectacle, doing little more than providing the expositional structures that connect one elaborate set piece to the next. When the virtual camera does pull away from massive CGI spacecrafts, sandworms, and desert battles, Villeneuve's direction struggles to create memorable performances. Timothée Chalamet delivers most of his lines as if he's battling Lockjaw. Macho warriors played by Josh Brolin and Jason Momoa are stereotypical characters that could have just easily been inherited by Vin Diesel and Dwayne Johnson, and Oscar Isaac is uncharacteristically one note as Paul's father, wearing his stoicism like the Shroud of Turin. The rare exceptions include Rebecca Ferguson as Paul's fiercely protective mother. She gets to flex her thespian muscles the most. And Charlotte Rampling, who dominates the screen as the venomous Reverend Mother of the Bene Gesserit, a sisterhood of witches. However, if you're a fan of impressive world building and special effects done on a spectacular scale, Dune definitely delivers the goods. To paraphrase Robert Ebert's advice following the home video release of an early desert basic epic, Lawrence of Arabia, you could watch Dune on your TV and enjoy some of its majesty, but to experience it properly, it needs to be seen on the largest screen possible. Dune Part 2 is scheduled to... All right, we're okay about that. He's just telling when Dune 2 comes out.
Mm.
How do you feel about that?
I'm lost for words from the shit he said. So,
I don't
yeah.
think he's
I don't know.
necessarily wrong.
Yeah, the performances about him on the actors, I think they're spot on. Jason Momoa
Like I
as
said,
Duncan Idaho
I
is.
never read the book, so I don't know about that.
I think it was well casted.
But I
Because
will say... Yeah.
whenever I read the books, I think of Jason Momoa as Duncan Idaho, and I think it was a perfectly casted.
Yeah, but
It
you
was
think
well
that when you first
casted.
read the book, did you read the book first?
What? Well, I didn't know the book existed after I saw the movie, and then when I read the book.
Honestly, but there's a certain bias there at that point.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
That's why.
Well, in a way, I thought it was well casted before I read the book. Before I read the book, I thought it was a good ensemble. I love the ensemble and all that. And when I read the book, I was like, damn, this is on
I
point.
think that statement's a little nonsensical.
What do you want me to say?
Well, because it's just like, well, I think it was expertly casted. Whatever. It was like, I think what he said here is some facts to it. Jason Momoa and Josh Brolin they very much are playing stereotypical macho characters. That's it. I mean, he's not. I wouldn't say Dwayne Johnson and Vin Diesel, but there are literally 100 other actors that I could say you could put into those roles, and the film probably wouldn't feel any different because it very much is a stereotypical character. Both of those characters very stereotypical.
How so? Because I
They're
never
both
saw them as
they're both just
stereotypical.
military soldiers,
Yeah.
and one of them is more so Paul's trainer than the other. Right, like Josh Brolin's character trains with him. But other than that, like Josh Brolin and what's his character's name here?
Gurney.
Gurney is no different than Josh Brolin in Sicario. They're the same character.
Is that a fair comparison?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what this is basically saying. Like they're not playing that. They're playing that macho military character. There's no difference. That's the type of character that he's playing, and I think that is a fair comparison to say like his character in Sicario and Gurney, they're not that far apart from one another. Hence why anyone could play that role because it's just a military character. It's it. Like you just got to be a tough, stoic military soldier. And it's kind of true about Oscar Isaac's character being the very stoic. The moment he says stoic, I kind of lie. In my mind, I'm laughing because it's like, yeah, no, he was a very stoic character. Once again, I never read the book, so I don't know if this is how these characters are supposed to be.
I don't want to spoil the book for you.
I enjoyed Oscar Isaac in the role, but I believe my enjoyment more so came from, I'd say, the scene right before he died, because that's where it's like all the emotion came into the character, and that's when he was actually able to act and not just be the stoic person that he was. But I also give Oscar Isaac the benefit of the doubt because I know he's a great actor. You know what I'm saying? So it's
Absolutely.
Like, so it's a little different there. Like so I'm going in with a bias, looking at him like, oh, I like Oscar Isaac. Oscar Isaac can do no wrong. You know what I'm saying? So it's like him doing a performance where, if we're being real, he doesn't have to do much. Of course, I'm going to like it. You know what I'm saying? So I don't think this is necessarily wrong. I don't think he's necessarily wrong, but I don't necessarily think he's right 100% either. But I do believe like the CGI carried the film, and I believe the CGI carried the film and the score, which no one's talking about the score, but I think that put anyone else on the score, and I think it drags very bad. Put any other composer on that, I don't think it works out at all.
Mm.
This guy has it rotten. Akos, Peter Ben's. I don't know how to pronounce that dog.
Me neither. I don't. Oh my goodness.
He
What is
says
that?
Villeneuve's blockbusters are his weaker movies. Don't get me wrong, the French Canadian director earned his place in Hollywood to make such big budgeted epic sci-fi fiction like Dune, but that doesn't change that his most impressive and enthralling films are the ones made on a lower budget. Prisoners, Enemy, Sicario. 100% why Josh Brolin got casted in that role because of Sicario. 100%. I don't think about it yet. No, they literally are the same character. He's like, they all have a distinct style and emotion that brought well-deserved attention to Villeneuve. Those features lifted him up as one of the most promising filmmakers in contemporary cinema. You know what I'm saying? But he's doing it so engaged in getting the plot right and building an appropriate world that it doesn't have time to let its characters bond or develop a real connection.
Mm.
And I think I can agree to that.
Mm. Go on. I want to hear your perspective.
On what he said?
Yeah.
So
I want to listen.
I do believe. So from the last guy, he made the last dude said that there was that Paul Atreides had this like lockjaw whenever he tried to speak, and
What the hell?
it's the way it's just think about every time he went to speak in the first film, he acts like it almost seems like there's a chip on Paul's shoulder. Is what it feels like. I guess is how you could try to spin it with the lockjaw line. And maybe you could say it's entitlement because he's a prince, whatever.
The heir to the throne.
There you go. You know what I'm saying? So it's like he holds himself to a certain reverence that he's trying to live up to. And I think that with this, right, him highlighting that he feels like his characters don't have enough time to bond or develop a connection. I do feel that way to a degree. Because I didn't.
You didn't sympathize with them?
Not when Duncan died, no. It was just like I'm upset that I gotta see. I'm upset that I have to see Jason Momoa die again. But not that Duncan died. I'm upset Jason Momoa died. Not Duncan.
Oh, I see.
And that's a problem.
I see where you're going.
You know what I'm saying?
I see.
Because the film, and it's true, like, this is why the film was boring. Because you're spending so much time building this world that when we should be getting to really know these characters and experience these characters and flesh them out and know who they are. Think about, like, the princess, the emperor's daughter in the second film.
Princess Irulan.
The time taken, even though it was a short amount of time, but the time taken to just give her those scenes where we were hearing her speak more and more and more and more. She's narrating certain things, and it builds her character. It helps us see her insight, how she's looking at the world, how she can call out the Reverend Mother, like, you're wrong. Also, she's operating on certain morals and certain grounds, and it just died. But yeah, she's operating under certain morals and certain grounds that helps build her character.
I see.
Right? So there's a certain investment there. Like, I want to see what happens with her when she finally meets Paul. There's this anticipation that gets built there.
Even as someone who hasn't read the books or the book,
that doesn't matter. The point of a movie is to storytell. So just there's a different medium. So your job as the director and the writers is to be able to tell the story in the best way possible. And one of the key components of storytelling is characters and them having character arcs. Hence character development. And if you can't develop your characters properly, your world falls flat. One of the best examples of character development, Game of Thrones, right? Lord of the Rings, great character development for a lot of the characters. And it's my favorite types of stories are the stories where you meet all these different characters all along the journey. And as you're learning about the new characters that you're coming across, and sometimes they're bad, sometimes they're good, sometimes they're in between. But as you're learning about them, you can literally sit there as the audience member, whether you're watching or reading or playing a game, and you can sit there and you're like, this person's story is so good that they could have been the main character.
Mm.
And I have a lot of that when I'm watching or reading Game of Thrones. When I was reading
I see.
Fire and Blood, I'm like, yeah, this could have been the main character, or they could have made the show about this character, that character, this character, that character. And I'm watching Game of Thrones when I was going through the whole show. I'm like, that's how I felt too. There's a lot of characters we come across. It's like you could have easily been the main character this whole time.
Isn't it the beauty of it all?
That's the beauty of storytelling, right? Because that's really what world building is.
Mm-hmm.
That's world building in my eyes. Or that's the best type of world building. What Denis did was cool, but it was so boring. If I wanted this, like, it was all this context about the world.
It was style over substance for you. Is that it?
To a degree. Because just think of the way the directors for, and I know you never really saw Game of Thrones, so it's just like it's hard to
I
explain.
only saw one season.
But it's just like their way of highlighting the world was by taking you on an adventure with the characters.
Mm-hmm.
You're experiencing it with these characters. Versus we get to Arrakis, and they're just giving a quick monologue of, so this is where the sand farm fields are.
Mm-hmm.
This is how we mine it, or this is how we farm it. You gotta watch out for the Fremen because they do this. Oh yeah, we run out of water. There's not much water. Blah blah blah. It's like you're just giving this long dialogue, and there'll be like a little break in between. Then there's another long dialogue. He wants to shake your hand, because they met the Fremen leader. Like, and then they did the spit shit. Like,
well, it did happen in the book, that part.
No, I'm not saying that that's bad, but it's just like there's so much just.
It's too long and vivid for you, and you wish it was shorter.
No, that's not. It's there's a better way to deliver that information than just you having these long drawn out pieces of dialogue. There's better ways to deliver that information, and there's better ways to write dialogue like that. That's the thing too. How characters say something, how things get explained. That's crazy. Right? When you have people that understand that. When you go and look at Game of Thrones for the first 4 seasons, they understood that very well. George R.R. Martin, when he wrote the books, understood that very well. How a character says something matters. How you get information delivered to you matters. How the character gets that information matters. Right? At a certain and that's why the film was boring, because it's like you're just delivering this shit. It feels like we're back in school with the way you're just delivering this information. Teacher in front of the class is giving this long monologue, explaining it. There's a better way to go about showing that. Showing versus telling. When you master that art, Dune 1 didn't really do a good job of showing versus telling. Right? You want to see, you could tell us the Fremen are great fighters. Dune 2 showed us that they were great fighters.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Showing versus telling. Now we have context in our head. Okay, cool. Maybe show. This is where, when I get into the beef I have with Josh Brolin's character and Batista's character. We could have got a flashback. When did you get the scar? Could we have seen the scar? You can talk about the scar all day, but showing us how you got the scar, it tells us you have the scar. And you know what else it tells us? It tells us that you want to kill Batista's character.
Rabin.
It shows how he beat you. So that way, in the context of your second fight, when they finally get to have that second fight, maybe the reason Batista lost was because Robin's name?
Rabin.
Robin?
Rabban. I always fuck up his name, so.
But the reason if you give us that context and show us that previous context I'm talking about,
yeah, I get it.
Then maybe you could, within this fight, maybe the reason Batista lost is because he did the same thing he did the first time, and he was expecting it, countered it, and killed him. You know what I'm saying? It's things like that. Well, why showing someone versus just, I got a scar from him. Okay, how did you get the scar? Did he just? Was it in the fight? Did he capture you? Why are you alive in the first place?
But he did mention Rabban Harkonnen killed my family, friends or family, and he gave me this scar to remember him by. So this is all my business. That's what he told Chani. Did that mean nothing to you?
Show me it. That whole attack they did in the first movie was cool, but it was like, once again, you didn't spend any time building up any of the characters in the first film. So we don't care about Josh Brolin. To me, he's Josh Brolin. I only know his name is Gurney because of how many times we've talked about this film. That's
And the
it.
books.
I haven't read the books,
Oh, right.
so
Sorry.
but that's where it's just like I only know his name because of that, and I called him Josh Brolin a second ago because I couldn't remember his name is Gurney. Because who is Gurney to me? Nobody. I know Josh Brolin because of Thanos, because of Sicario, because of The Goonies.
He was in.
You're John, huh?
I hadn't seen the Goonies in years.
He was the older brother.
Oh shit.
So yeah, Josh Brolin. That's Josh Brolin. Thanos.
I see.
But Gurney ain't nobody to me. Showing versus telling is so much. There's so much to that. And Dune 1 opted to just show us, to tell us about the world in order to describe it, and then show us beautiful CGI of the world. Awesome, but I think per the information that we got, there was a better way to include that within showing the world than just delivering it as dialogue. That just came off as very boring. There's a better way to storytell. And the way Dune 2 went, I know he knows how to do that type of storytelling. So the fact that he didn't do that is preposterous to me.
Is it okay if I explain to you how I feel about this one? Because I do understand where you're going from, but I didn't feel the way you feel. Like I was glued to the screen of the imagery, and I was perplexed by the imagery. Like whenever I watch a Denis Villeneuve movie, I always get hooked to the screen. And Dune Part 1, it's an extraordinary piece of cinema in my eyes. Like he brought the source material to life, and it feels like, I mentioned this before, that Frank Herbert made the movie. Like it felt like from Frank Herbert's eyes. But I have to add, I'll say this: the book has more emphasis and more detail.
No, of course.
But I do agree why. And when I saw it recently, and then when I compared to Part 2, I was like, I see where Justin was coming from.
Night and day. Let me ask you. When they brought Duncan into the film for the first time, what did he tell Paul? Do you remember?
He all I remember is him, my boy, and usually Paul Atreides usually confides in him. He sees him as a father figure.
But you're getting that from the book.
In the book, well, yeah, I think I do. It's been a while because I've been focusing on more of the lore of the book.
But I'm saying that wasn't present in the movie at all.
In the movie,
yeah, what you just said, that father figure aspect.
That it shows us he's more of a father figure
in the book.
Not in the book. I hadn't read the book in a while, to be honest.
But I'm saying, where are you getting that idea from?
I could tell by it from the movie, the way Denis represented the movie, the representation, because
I'm not gonna say a father figure.
You really? Because the way the way Paul
you can look
bonds
up
with
to someone
Duncan,
and not look at them as a father figure.
Well, that's the way I see it in a way. Well, I don't know if it's a bad example I gave. So, how would you see it? Because that bond is beautiful and rich, and I admires him. You know, like he trained Paul since he was little. You know, what do you think?
I think you can admire someone and not look at him as a father figure.
Mm-hmm.
I think he can want to aspire to be as big and strong as his character, but not all that. Like, I look at him as a father because he has a father there that he loves and respects and has, a certain dynamic with.
But you didn't wish you had a second father or father figure in that aspect?
Who?
Anybody has a father figure.
No.
Really?
No.
Because there's a lot of new people that say that they look him up as their second father.
No, I don't do that.
You don't believe in that?
No.
Oh, okay. I see.
I don't look up to anybody.
Oh.
And I've always been like that. I've never looked up. There's no man in this world that I'm like, I want to be like. No.
I'm not. That's not what I'm saying though. But you admire them in a way.
No.
Interesting. All right. Where else should I go? Because you kind of
lost
me there, and I lost my train of thought since you mentioned it.
But the reason I brought up what was the like, what did you remember, like the line wise of when Duncan and him were first together on screen? At that point, let's just segue to, and you didn't necessarily give an answer, but
you
gave kind of an answer, but then you went into the father figure nonsense.
Cause you lost me for a sec.
You were the one that
Well,
said
actually,
it. You lost yourself.
Actually, I'm screwing up. Let's keep moving forward.
So the whole reason I brought that up is because I'm like, there's nothing memorable dialogue-wise from really any of these characters in the first film.
Even when Paul talks about his dreams to Duncan in the first act of the movie,
What
like
did
he
he
didn't,
say?
like he dreamt of Arrakis, obviously, you know, like, and then he explains to him that he sees Duncan in
I dreamed of
Arrakis.
Arrakis.
That sounds basic to you, does it?
It's not that it sounds basic, but it's just like,
Because I found
but
that
what does it do for Duncan's character? What does that do for Josh Brolin's character? Who was he talking to? He was talking to Gurney, right?
Paul was talking to Duncan in the first act about his dreams.
There you go. He's talking about Duncan, Jason Momoa's character.
Yes.
Because this is where he has the fear of him getting killed.
Yes. Yes.
And he gets brushed off. Like, I ain't gonna die.
Yeah. That's it.
And I'm like,
that didn't mean nothing to you?
No, because once again, this is Jason Momoa. That's Aquaman.
Ah, but what did your brother think of?
That's Conan the Barbarian.
Conan the Barbarian.
He was Conan the Barbarian in live action. That was like his first film.
Interesting. Yeah. What did your brother think of that movie?
I don't know. I didn't ask him.
Oh, cause when I first saw it, I was hooked and I admired the characters. Like, I love the new characters, the world building. Like, I thought it was something fresh to me in the realm of science fiction. And like I mentioned before, Dune opened my eyes to the poetic ¿Qué te pasa?
Well, what you said before, when you initially spoke about how you felt about the film,
yeah,
the first thing out of your mouth was you highlighting the visual of the world.
Yeah.
No one's questioning how it looks. Beautiful, spectacular, immaculate.
Mm-hmm.
It's the characters involved that don't get fleshed out. That's the issue. Or they're just playing stereotypical versions of these types of characters, like Duncan or Gurney. Like, they're just stereotypical versions of themselves. And it is true to a degree for me, that where it's just like the most interesting part of the film was whenever the Bene Gesserits were on the screen. Other than that, because that brought mystery and intrigue.
And Hans Zimmer's powerful score.
Oh, I'm just talking about the characters right now.
Oh,
but for the characters, but his score for the Bene Gesserits was part of the reason why that was so intriguing.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Sends chills every time that comes on.
But everyone else there was just like,
you just didn't
even
care.
his mom. I was like,
Lady Jessica.
I was bored of her too. Like, the whole cast of characters was just very boring. Like, you had, and that's part of the problem. It's just like, that's why the film was boring. Because the characters weren't interesting. They didn't do anything interesting. Like, we can sit here and talk all day. But this is where there's a way to make talking interesting.
I see.
Silence of the Lambs makes talking very interesting whenever they're talking to Hannibal Lecter. Because there's a way to write, because who is Hannibal Lecter? How would he say these lines? This is how he should say these lines.
Oh, yeah.
Then Anthony Hopkins does his thing.
Anthony Hopkins is Anthony Hopkins, baby.
And then he delivers. So within this context of Dune, it's just like, it was just the dialogue given for some of these characters. It wasn't bad dialogue. It was just boringly basic or boringly stereotypical. Been here, done that. What else do we have? At least the Baron was unsettlingly fat and just started floating up and shit like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, why are you so big and like anti-gravity? You know what I'm saying? Like, you're taking baths in tar. What's up with that? You know what I'm saying? Like, you gross looking, menacing. So there's an intrigue there. It's like what made, like, the most interesting parts of Dune 1 were the characters that had mystery around them. Everyone else was just, I'm tired of you being on screen. Not
even the political aspects of the movie?
No.
Not that either?
The political aspect being, hey, the Emperor doesn't like this house. They're getting too much power.
About the spice and all that? Being Arrakis and all that?
I don't know shit about no spice. Show us how the spice is being used. Show us what it looks like when they go cross the galaxy, traverse.
Mm.
That way I have context in my mind. Okay, so this is what the spice does. That's why everyone wants it.
Mm.
They just told us. Okay, cool. You couldn't have spent one scene. Instead of the scene where they tell you it, they could have just showed us.
What about the way the film began when Chani narrates the beginning? You know, my
I mean,
desert
honestly,
planet Arrakis is so
I don't
beautiful
like
in
her
the sun
voice
of.
for narration.
Really?
You know,
Like I found,
there's certain voices that are good for narrating. I didn't care for Zendaya's voice for narrating.
because I found it so. I think it was cordial and um, I found her so cordial and I kind of was hooked, like the soft voice. Like you
Yeah.
get what I mean? You get where I'm going from,
Oh,
right?
I can hear it in my head. I'm just like,
Like
I don't
I'm
even
just
know.
like, I was like, and then I guess sucked
I liked
into the first shot of the movie.
I like Florence Poe's narrating. She has a better voice for narrating, in my opinion.
Absolutely,
Like, so,
absolutely, that's true.
so yeah, I didn't care for Zendaya's narrating.
Mhm.
You either have a voice for narrating or you don't. Honestly, the person that probably should have had narrating was the mom for the first one. She has a voice for narrating. I enjoyed hearing her talk.
Mm.
It's the British in her.
Mm.
If she's from Britain, I don't fucking know.
She.
It's the accent that she had. Like, oh, I can. Which Florence Poe has an accent. They should have had the actors with accents doing the narrating.
Mm.
It just sounds better because they come from a cloth typically where they do actual onstage acting, and so they understand presence and all that. So it means more when they understand real line delivery when you're on a stage like that. Now I don't know if Florence Poe or the mom have actual onstage acting experience, but Florence Poe is a great actress, phenomenal actress. I
Of
would
course.
argue, I will stand on a hill and die and say that she's a better actress than Zendaya.
Okay. Uh, that's objectively true. She is a phenomenal actress.
Better than Zendaya.
Hmm.
But Zendaya hasn't had the opportunity in film to present herself the same way someone like Florence Pugh has. Because Zendaya can act all day, every day. Her scene in
Euphoria.
where she did the whole where she was going through the withdrawals was
I
fucking
didn't in
killer.
season 1 or
Season 2.
I didn't see season 2 yet.
Her withdrawal shit was insane.
Mm.
Crazy that episode. Amazing. She did that fucking. That's when I knew like okay she can act.
Mm.
That was the scene that gave it to me. Like, yeah, 100%. I've seen Zendaya from like the early on since I heard career to now because sister used to watch Shake It Up back in the day. Then on KC Undercover, so it's like I've seen Zendaya's career grow from where it is to now. So it's like that was the proof to me. Like, oh, she can act. They just have to she has to just secure a role where she can actually do that,
Mm.
which that's what I'm waiting for. And I feel like she's getting closer to that point.
You gotta check out Challengers.
No, I want to watch it. I'm pretty sure it's on Max, ain't it?
I personally don't know.
I'll figure it out.
I saw it 2 times. It's a very entertaining movie.
But yeah, narrating.
Mm.
I wouldn't make my worst enemy sit through doing one. This is gonna put him to sleep.
I won't consider it of a night closer. I think it was gripping.
It took me 3 times. I watched it with mom. She did fall asleep.
It happens. Like that movie is not for everybody.
I would argue it's not for the majority of people.
Well, check Letterbox because it does have good ratings on there. You know.
I don't know if I respect Letterbox as a review entity, as a credible source.
That's what it is.
But what I'll say about this shit is this. And this is how I close it. And then we'll hear how you want to close it. Dune 1 is a snooze fest.
Okay.
But it's a beautiful snooze fest. It's a boring time. But it wasn't a bad film.
Okay.
Evidence by the amount of money Dune 2 made. Because everyone I know that I've spoken to about the film, about both of them, have literally said the same thing. Dune 1, boring. Dune 2, amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just it. That's where my stance comes from. Where it's like, no, it took me 3 times to finish Dune 1.
Mm. Like you
I
had to
never went.
restart it.
No, I kept coming back to the part I was at.
Mm.
It took me 3 different times, and that's why it's bad. It's like it took me 3 different times. Like I started back here, I watched it here, then I stopped watching, came back, got started from right here, went forward, stopped watching, and the third time I finally went through because it was just like 3 times to watch Dune 1.
Mm-hmm.
I watched Dune 2 3 times. I've only seen Dune 1 the one time.
Did you see it 3 times in the cinemas or no?
2 times in the movies, 1 time at the house.
Ah, 3 times in the cinemas.
Which it didn't lose. It didn't lose anything from watching it at the crib. It didn't lose any presence at all.
Why do you think I watch it so often?
But so yeah, that's my stance on it. You know what I'm saying? That's the difference is night and day between those two films.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
But yeah, you have the floor.
Well, I would say this movie may not be for everybody or for most people, as you say, but for those, this is for the fans of the books. I feel like this is meant for the fans of the books, even if you love it or hate it. But I'm the person that loves it, even though the novel has more detail. But we all know part 2 is the magnum opus of it all.
We'll see what happens with number 3, baby.
I'm hesitant
you know
about.
What I'm saying?
I'm very hesitant.
And
I'm hesitant about it.
Next time we do a video like this, my laptop will be charged and will not die.
Mm-hmm.
So we can actually go through more reviewers' opinions on the films. I don't think anything that was said negatively about the film or positively about the film was wrong at all. I think every statement held a certain amount of weight towards the film, 100%. I'm curious about what the opinions of number 2 are, and we'll get more than 4 opinions.
Mm.
But yeah, you know what I'm saying? This has been the Casual and the Cinephile. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Comment down below what you want to see next, whether just us going over reviews for a film or just another film for us to discuss in general. This has been the Casual and the Cinephile. We'll see you next time.